Salesforce CEO Marc Benioff says that he's working to close the gender pay gap in Silicon Valley. In 2016, his company did an internal salary analysis to see if men and women were paid equally, and it turns out they were not.
The company then spent $3 million to eliminate those differences. Marc Benioff wrote a book about the experience, and he joined CBS This Morning earlier to discuss it.
Of course, you have shareholders. That's one of the core premises. And you also have stakeholders, like we just talked about.
Yeah.
The employees, the customers, the partners, the homeless,
that's
the
a fairly
schools.
radical.
CNET senior producer Dan Patterson is here with more. So, Dan, when Marc Benioff says shareholders and stakeholders, what does he mean?
All right, so you think stakeholder and shareholder business terms, right? You're accustomed to hearing this about either with a shareholder, somebody who has bought stock in a company, and a stakeholder, somebody who is invested in a project. You often hear this, at least in tech, around project management, right? It sounds like jargon. What Benioff is talking about, he's trying to create a metaphor here so that people in Silicon Valley can hear him when he talks about including their community. This includes the homeless. It includes shortening this gender pay gap that we see, and including what he calls, again, stakeholders, other members of the community there, and the United States as a community as well, involved in their decision-making process. And his kind of thesis is that the more people who are involved in helping us as a company make decisions, they're involved no matter what. So if they're involved and they feel as though they're invested and involved, then we can grow as a company as well, and we can bring them along with us, and everyone benefits. We grow to a larger size, the community is more healthy, it thrives. That's what he means by stakeholders and shareholders.
And so is it just about closing the gender pay gap? Is that what propels this whole thing?
Well, he is using the gender pay gap as an actionable thing that Salesforce can actually do and accomplish. In his book, he talks about a meeting that he had in 2012 where two of his female executives came to him, and they were pretty forthright. He said that they presented him with evidence and data that said there was a huge pay gap and there's a huge representation gap in the company. So not only was the pay, the big gap in the pay, but also in who made decisions at the company. So this is something where he said, look, I can make a difference here with this one thing. Instead of talking in the abstract, let's figure out the numbers and use data to close that gap.
Benioff also gave examples of how he says the company has fought against anti-LGBTQ laws in Indiana. So let's play a little bit of that.
When I got a phone call saying, hey, we have a problem, the governor, at the time Mike Pence, just signed a law discriminating against the LGBTQ community. So we said, hey, if you don't change that law, we're going to de-invest. And when we said that, hundreds of other companies followed us.
I mean, why are more companies not doing that?
Well, this kind of depends on how you feel about the power of big business. On the one hand, many have argued that, well, just because these are issues that Benioff likes and that Salesforce wants to get behind, that's fine, but what if we politically disagree with these issues? So the power of big business, especially a business that has as much leverage as Salesforce, could be perceived as a negative thing. On the other hand, Vlad, to answer your question, Benioff kind of asked the same rhetorical question. Why aren't more businesses leading by example? So once again, going back to the here's what we can do to close the gender pay gap issue, Benioff is saying, hey, look, we can talk in the abstract. Here's what we can do. We can be a leader and help other businesses figure out that this is being LGBTQ inclusive is good for business as well as good for other human beings.
So his whole philosophy, do you see this, or does he see this as something that could become a trend?
Yeah, he sees this as, once again, we can be a leader, but this is kind of the direction that not just history, not just politics, not just business is headed, but all of culture is kind of headed in this direction, and it is advantageous for us to be leaders.
All right, Dan Patterson, thank you.
Thanks,
Good
Dan.
to see you.